can you defeat a pool noodle? Alrighty, this right here is the Swordier 18C. Look at that beastie. This bad boy stands pretty much up to about my belly button, putting it firmly in the bastard sword category. This sword is made by Swordier. You can see his lovely little maker's mark right there, which is on all of Swordier's blade. This blade in the hand feels like it wants to cut, and I feel like that's very important. A lot of the Japanese swordsmen talk about the soul of the blade, and when you feel the blade and you extend it forward, you should really feel the spirit of the blade, almost like an extension of your arm. And it sounds very cliche to say that, but that's really what people are looking for. It helps to increase in your mind the morale of your ability to fight with the sword. I know if I step into the ring with an unfamiliar sword that I'm not attuned to, a lot of the time I feel very unsure. So not feeling unsure, being like, I know how to use this, I can feel it in my hand, I have a very good idea of exactly how this is going to move in the air. That is super important when it comes to a cutting sword, not to mention swords in general, even if our primary purpose is not cutting tournaments. I'm going to set this sword down here for just a second. This right here is the Scabbard. Now the Scabbard is really nothing to write home about. It's definitely a Scabbard. We have this lovely attachment mechanism here. Goes around your back like so. Whoop. And tucks in just like there. That buckles. You do the Gandalf knot. And ta-da! Scabbard is on. So with earlier longswords and earlier arming swords, this was a fairly common belt attachment method. They like to weave it into the actual scabbard here, so that way this doesn't slide up and down. This one doesn't seem to be woven in anywhere, and it kind of wiggles around. So if you don't really like it, it's fairly easy to remove this belt mechanism and just keep the scabbard, or change it out for something that's maybe a little bit more historically accurate. Now, does it pass the smell test? It honestly doesn't smell like anything, so I couldn't tell you. Yeah, might be some sword oil smell. I wonder why that smells right there. It's a bit odd, but this right here, like I said, is a very traditional method of mounting earlier longswords. As we go later in period, they actually have multiple attachment hooks, usually a ring here, a ring here, and a ring here. Sometimes even a third ring over on this side, so you can attach it back behind where the small of your back is, as well as on your hip, which gives you a very secure hold. That was one of the complaints, I believe, with earlier longswords, just having the two belt mechanism, is it fits very securely at your side, but it knocks about all the time, which is going to happen anytime that you wear a scabbard anyways. This right here, we're looking down at the top. You can see we have a rain catch right there. We've talked a little bit about that, helping to keep rain from getting inside the guard on the top part of your sword right there. Because if rain gets down into this part, then it can rust, and you might have a hard time drawing it out when you really need it to. Set that back down here. So we have the rain guard there. We have a wood core, which appears to be some kind of particle board. It's hard to tell specifically, and it may not show up on camera very well, but it's sturdy enough. You can hit it. Sounds like it's knocking. I've beaten this up a little bit because I've done some cutting with it. We have kind of a cheap chape on the end. Cheap chape, ha ha ha. That was a funny joke, and if you don't think that's funny, your mother has gout. Looking in at the back side of your scabbard, you can see right there, we have just a very simple stitch mechanism. The leather is most likely fake leather, so the stitching mechanism just kind of looks like butterfly down and then butterfly back up. So if you don't like it, easy enough to remove, and then you just have the wood core. It honestly doesn't look too bad though. So a lot of the cheaper scabbards that you'll find out on the market definitely don't look bad at all. I mean, I'd be comfortable wearing that around a Renaissance fair, and it's fairly easy to pair anything black with brown. Most people's outfits will have a very similar setup. So if you want to look really cool at a cutting tournament, you can dress up and put this guy on and not feel too bad for yourself. Now, it will catch the eye of some historical reenactors saying, hey, it doesn't look very historical, but from a distance, and I mean, if I pull this off here to the light, you can't tell me how quality that leather is. And if you think you can, I mean, I feel bad for you because your mom's going through gout, so I won't say too much. This right here, we have just normal brass fittings on the outside of the scabbard, so nothing really to write home about. It's definitely a scabbard, which is good to say because a lot of swords don't have scabbards that come with them, especially in the budget category, which historically is a little bit weird because almost all swords were sold, at least at the marketplaces that we know of, were sold with scabbards because it's very hard to transport a sword without a scabbard. You can imagine trying to walk around town like this, you might get stopped by the burghers thinking that you have your sword drawn for an unknown reason. Kind of like walking around open carrying is nowadays. If you go and your blade is showing, it is showing somewhat of intent. So most historical manufacturers would put some kind of a scabbard over their sword, even if it doesn't have a belt mechanism, and just sling it over your shoulder. There's actually a play in Fiore where it's shown him in that exact situation where he's standing here and it has a scabbard on it, and some guy comes and grabs him by the collar and says, "I'm going to stab you." And he says in Fiore-like fashion, "I dare you to try." And he takes his sword and he slips it. I'm going to put the scabbard on here so I don't accidentally cut myself. Whoop. He has his scabbard out like this, and he pulls his scabbard out like that and hooks his pommel over the top of what they're doing. Or he takes his sword and actually sticks the point right there in between their arms and uses that to push the scabbard out and pull the sword out to be able to engage with his opponent. Fiore is probably one of my favorite historical masters just because he's a master of trash talking. I've been really working on my trash talking game. It's kind of a spiritual journey for me. Started with my father and his father before him, but yeah, if you ever meet me at tournament, I'd be happy to trash talk you a little bit. As is only right, because what is sword fighting without a little bit of banter? This right here, now we're taking a look at the sword. This is the pommel right there. We've got a beautiful scent stopper pommel with all the angles. It is not uncomfortable to grip. I can hold that fairly comfortably. The edges are all rounded, which is very important. We have a peen there on the end that has been refined into a pyramidal shape. This right here is the grip. You can see we have just a basic stitching down through the middle. That's fairly common historically right there or right there. I do like it on the inside because you can actually hide this against your body when you're wearing it, and it makes it look a lot cleaner. The leather is fake when you feel it, but it looks fairly good. It has a nice texture to it that makes it look like leather. So I don't have any problems with that. I think probably the guard and the pommel are likely going to be some kind of aluminum or stainless steel, because I haven't really treated this one very well. I keep touching it and being like, "Ooh, look, it's a sword. That's so fun." And it looks like these aren't developing any rust. The blade is definitely some kind of a carbon steel of some sort. Swordier talks a lot about, Alex from Swordier talks a lot about the quality of his steel, which, as far as I can tell, it seems to be really high quality. So even if you don't like the fittings, this would be an amazing project sword if you want to really like deck it out. The sword, you can hear it. Sounds a bit like a bell. There's a little bit of a rattle to it, but it's definitely nothing bad. I'm hammering on this. Nothing's moving. It feels like it's pretty solid. Looking down at the blade profile, we can see that we have a short but fat blade. And we know short, fat blades are typically going to be very good, powerful cutters. I believe this one has a little bit of a hollow grind to it as well. So if you look down the blade, one of the coolest grinds, or at least one of my favorite grinds for cutting, is when they're rounding out the grind. What they'll do is instead of just making it a flat bevel all the way to the edge, they'll actually cut into the sword just a little bit. So it's a U shape that you see coming out of the diamond cross section. That right there makes for a very, very thin edge. Now, if I was fighting with a sword against people in armor, I may not want something like that. But in our context, where the only time that we're ever going to be fighting as HEMAists or martial artists in general are going to be either in a sparring context or against an opponent who hasn't ever used a sword. So having that single bevel edge, or sorry, that hollow ground edge on there makes a very interesting, very good cutting edge. If you look down the center of the sword as well, you can see we have a very good raised central ridge. We have a little bit of rippling in the blade this way, but the diamond cross section is straight on. So I see no problems with that. I think these are hand ground, so they're not going to be exactly perfect, but we do have a really good mirror edge here on the sword. So if I hold it in reverse grip, which is the only proper grip of a sword, you can see it has a very clean grind all the way through. So if I, at the end of a battle, just got done fighting my opponent, I can wipe off my blade and then check my hair to make sure that nothing is missing and that my hair is in a good place for when I go to my next engagement. The sword does come covered in oil of some sort. It seems to be some kind of a synthetic oil. It doesn't smell like anything, so maybe even like a mineral oil. So that works fine. I don't have any problems with it. It hasn't rusted at all, even though I'm touching it fairly frequently. So whatever they are using is a good quality material. So all in all, I think the sword is actually, a fairly decent piece of equipment. If you're just looking for a sword to wear around a Renaissance fair that you don't care too much about, this is a great option. Or even if you're looking for a competition cutting sword and you don't have the budget for something like an Albion or some kind of crazy third-party sword maker, this would be not a bad idea. I might recommend bulking up the grip a little bit with some hockey tape if you have big hands like me. But other than that, I see pretty much no problems with the sword. There is a little bit of a concern when I tap it. You can feel the tang on the inside. It's not noticeable enough that I can be 100% sure, but I think the tang is fairly thin on the inside of the blade. I haven't taken it apart because I like the sword and I don't want to get rid of it to see how thick the tang is. But if we're looking at the size of that pommel nut right there, it looks like it may only be about a ½ inch thick at the end. So I would be careful about striking any super hard targets with this. If it does start to rattle, I'd recommend taking it apart and taking a look at it. But I've hit some fairly substantial targets with this, and I don't think I've run into any issues. Those substantial targets mostly being a rock that I hit when I was doing my cutting testing. But even then, you can look at this very point right there. It hasn't rolled, it hasn't deformed. It's gone just a little bit dull. So I think the sword quality is fairly good. And I mean, a lot of people talk about you get what you pay for, but this sword is honestly, fairly cheap and fairly good quality. I know I've spent much more money on swords than this one for swords that are of much less quality. So I think Swordier is a good option. And what's cool about him is we've actually met him in person. So he came out to Combat Con last year, the last year of Combat Con actually, and he sold out of all of his models. I've since bought some things from him. I bought a rapier, I bought a saber, and I've had zero complaints. I actually bought 2 sabers. I've had 0 complaints with his quality. Some of our guys even competed with them. I saw 2 Swordier rapiers at SoCal this year. So definitely not a bad maker at all. It's cheap too, which is huge because a lot of us are poor. And because a lot of you guys are poor, this is definitely not a bad option. So long story short, I'd probably give the sword about a 7.5 out of 10. If we figure money into the price, it's probably a 10 out of 10. Because you can't expect a whole ton for a sword that's less than 400 bucks. And this sword is honestly a lot higher quality than some makers that I won't name here. But yeah, that's kind of a good picture of what this sword is. And thanks for tuning into the channel and staying towards the end. But yeah, go buy it. Go spend some money at this guy. He does a great job.
Shadows play, dragons rise at break of day, hammers echo through the mist, twilight whispers magic kiss.